Well, former advocate of accused 1 through to 4 in the Senzo Meyiwa trial, Malesela Teffo, has been struck off the legal practitioner's role. The decision was made by Justice Bokako in the North Gauteng High Court after the Legal Practice Council received about 27 complaints against Teffo. Some of the complaints brought forward were related to misconduct and a misappropriation of funds. Delivering the ruling, Justice Bokako ordered Teffo to surrender and deliver his legal practitioner enrollment certificate and other legal documents to the registrar of the court. But what recourse does Malesela still have at this point? For that and more, we're joined by legal researcher Nkanyiso Ngqulunga. Nkanyiso, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us this morning. Let's start, I suppose, at the beginning of this entire legal battle for Malesela Teffo. I mean, what were some of the points that the complainants absolutely needed to prove for such an order to be granted?
Good morning and thanks for having me. So the complaints were different because there is dishonesty and there is just a violation of the Legal Practice Council Act, and there's a violation of the Code of Conduct for lawyers and advocates, in particular. So then the charges ranges from his conduct, such as consulting with the clients without an instructing attorney. We would know that normally the rules do not allow advocates to consult with clients directly without having been briefed by an attorney. And then another complaint that relates to the offenses was actually getting money from the clients directly, not from the attorneys that had briefed him. And some other charges, really damning charges, are actually about assault. You know, he goes into an arbitration at the SAPS building and starts assaulting people, and then there were cases against him. And again, there was another charge where he failed to honor the default judgment that were issued against him, and also that resulted in him being arrested or in a warrant of arrest being issued. And another charge, if I remember it very well, was a charge where he actually makes certain remarks in court, at the labor court, or files an affidavit so that he can actually get a default judgment, you know. So those were just among other charges of dishonesty. And obviously one would expect that the legal standards that are required of legal practitioners when they are practicing is that it's extremely high, and ethical standards that is of high value, because the test, according to the legal practice, is that you must be fit and proper to be a lawyer. So given the nature of these charges, obviously we were expecting that such charges may really stick in terms of him being struck off the roll, because what the court then would want to do is to evaluate the complaints and the nature as well as the evidence that will be presented before the court, and then effectively then issue an order that confirms that he is struck off the roll.
You know, looking at the misconduct that was found against Malesela Teffo, is it fair to say that, you know, had he been allowed to practice any further, for instance, that he might have actually posed a real danger to the public, but also just to the good name of the profession?
Of course, I think ethics are very important for lawyers because they work with clients and they work on critical issues. So, and also how they conduct themselves is very much important so that they still maintain the rules and the code of conduct of lawyers generally. So, in my view, it would have been very bad if he would be able to continue to practice the law given how he had been conducting himself. And it would be setting a very bad precedent, because examples must be set, and a behavior that is not in line with the code of conduct should in fact be rectified by either ensuring that people are deterred from continuing undermining the court processes and undermining the rule of law generally, all under the ticket of being lawyers, because lawyers are officials of the court wherever they are, and whenever they are in court, they also there to assist the court to arrive at a particular decision, not to make the court about themselves, So that particular misconduct, it's a very serious in nature.
We've also learned, Nkanyiso, that Malesela Teffo is under investigation for corrupt activities under the Prevention of Organized Crime Act. We know that that probe is already underway. Would Friday's ruling and the findings that Judge Bokako came to, as well as that scathing judgment, act as an aggravating element in these ongoing investigations?
Yes, of course. We would expect it that if there are allegations against misappropriation of funds, for instance, was one of the offenses, where he gets money from clients directly and he also has found himself in a very compromising situation with regards to funds. So obviously the court's given that evidence as a duty to refer those matters for investigations so that they can be a possible criminal prosecution. And the judgment will really help in advancing that investigation for the NPA to perhaps be able to prosecute him if there's anything or if there's any wrongdoing for that matter. But in this instance, there is a wrongdoing, as according to the judgment, as we were alluding yesterday. But the NPA will still have to investigate, obviously, within its own legal framework and satisfy particular legal standards, and then he can then be prosecuted if he's to be prosecuted by the NPA.
All right. So now that we obviously have the disbarment in place, and we've learned that he's got a specific duration, a specific period of time to return that certificate of enrollment, what options are still available to Malesela Teffo? I mean, this was a court process, so I'm assuming some sort of an appeal could be lodged against what the court eventually found against him.
I mean, yes, he still has a right to appeal the judgment if he feels like it's not a right judgment. But in this instance, he had been given a lot of time and invited to court to prepare his defense, and because initially the LPC had sought a default judgment against him, and because the matter was instituted like a year ago, so the proceedings have been moving for over a year now, and he was aware of the proceedings, and only now that he intended to defend himself, and which was very late. So I think we may expect an appeal, of which, in my view, sometimes appeals and such applications also, they depend much on the prospects of success for other courts to reconsider the decision. Particularly here, he has a very slim door for that, because it's an issue that is decided mostly on factual issues. I don't think it's the issues of the law. So it would have been much easier if it was the issues of the law in dispute. But in this instance, it's mostly factual issues that arise, and then the door even for the appeal to succeed, in my view, is very slim.
And, should his appeal in fact fail, if he doesn't in fact lodge an appeal and it does fail and the disbarment stands, are there other options still available to Teffo in terms of just working his way back into the profession? I mean, what would that particular journey look like for him?
Well, as an advocate, he obviously would have to still satisfy, the fit and proper test, even if he were to come back to the profession, maybe as an attorney, maybe as any other thing other than being an advocate. So I also do not think there's much that he can do with respect to what has happened, because he still has to satisfy the requirements of being fit and proper. So given a judgment against him from the High Court, and that was sought by the LPC, the LPC cannot be in the position to admit him, even if we were to come as an attorney for that matter, to practice the law. So I do not think he's got much to do in this instance or any other avenue, unless he obviously waits for a particular period of which is not also prescribed, and then later then applies to regain his status, where he will also now have to demonstrate and make a case before the court that he is now indeed fit and proper to continue to practice the law. But in this instance, there's really not much that he can do.
Well, Nkanyiso, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us. That was legal researcher Nkanyiso Ngqulunga just taking us through there. Some of the options are still available to Malesela Teffo now that he has been disbarred, now that he's been struck off the role of advocates. Well,